Hey everybody, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and this is part 2 of our busy day refilling the fall pantry. And in today's video, we are working on making up 2 dry mixes, and I am going to be making 2 recipes using these dry mixes. So I hope you stick around.
We're going to be making a bulk chocolate cake mix, and this will make 4 full-size cakes. If you want to change this to a single batch, you'll just need to divide the recipe by 4. So what we're going to do is I'm going to mix it all in this bowl, and then we're going to put it in this, and we're going to keep out 1 batch because we're going to mix something up and make that today. So we're going to take 7 cups of regular all-purpose flour. Okay, there's 7. Then we're going to take 7 cups of white sugar. There is 7. Now we're going to also put 1 cup of packed brown sugar. We need 3 cups of cocoa, whichever kind of cocoa you like to bake with. I believe this one is Dutch cocoa. Okay, since a cup won't fit in here, I'm going to do a ½ cup interval. So let's see, I said 3 cups, so we're going to need to do 6 ½ cups. 1. Okay, so there was 3 cups of cocoa. I need 6 teaspoons of baking powder. And 6 teaspoons is equivalent to 2 tablespoons. I need 6 teaspoons of baking soda. Again, that's the same as 2 tablespoons. All right, interrupted just a minute. One of our timers went off, so I had to turn off the pressure canner for our pints, and the other one's about 10 minutes behind, so we might be hearing that here in a second as well. So we were getting ready to measure the cornstarch, and it says, let's see, 4 tablespoons, which is the same as a 1/4 cup. So we're going to do a 1/4 cup of cornstarch. All right, so I'll read the ingredients again. 7 cups of flour, 7 cups of white sugar, 1 cup of brown sugar, 3 cups of cocoa, 6 teaspoons baking powder, 6 teaspoons baking soda, 4 tablespoons cornstarch, 4 teaspoons of salt. We've got all of that in here. Now we need to make sure it is well incorporated. So let's get all of that in here really well. Now to make this cake, you are going to use 4 1/2 cups of this powdered mixture. And you're going to add 2 large eggs, a ½ cup of vegetable oil, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and you can either add 2 cups of milk, or you can add 1 cup of milk and 1 cup of warm coffee. It's up to you on that. The coffee makes it a very rich tasting cake. You really don't taste the coffee, but it does make it very rich tasting. And I will have the big batch recipe and the recipe to use this mix at the end of the video, or if you go to my Facebook page, Blue Rooster Farm, you will find it there about 2 days after this video comes out. And you can just print that off right there. So again, you want to make sure everything is nicely stirred. The one thing I forgot to add that we need to add is the salt. We got to get the salt in. I was just thinking, I don't think I've added that salt. Now you need to add 4 teaspoons of salt. And I usually cook with kosher salt, but because this is going to be a mix, I'm trying to keep all the ingredients about the same consistency. So I'm just going to use table salt. And 4 teaspoons is the same as a tablespoon and a teaspoon. Now, what I suggest you do, once you get this in your jar, your big jar or whatever you're keeping it in, give it a good shake. And then every time before you use it, I would turn it upside down and give it a good shake just to make sure everything's well incorporated. Everything's pretty much the same consistency. Of course, the sugar is heavier. It will probably tend to want to settle, but if you just give it a good shake, it should be okay. Okay, we're going to see how much will go into this, and then we're going to keep out at least a batch, and we're going to use it. So we're going to be making a special chocolate cake. And again, I think this is going to fill this up perfectly. I'm just not going to put it in because it's no sense in putting it in and then taking it out again. I'm going to measure what I have here, and we're going to use that. So I'll bring you right back. I'm going to get this cleaned up, take out 4.5 cups of the mix. I'm going to label my mix jar like I did my white cake mix jar. And I have some stickers that I got at the dollar store. Let me bring it closer to you. That I'm going to put on the lid, and it just basically tells you what's in the jar and what to do to make the cake. And so these were really nice little stickers to have. So I've got another one, and I'll just stick that on top of this chocolate cake jar and have everything that I need at that jar. And when I need to refill it, I know exactly what I need to put in it because it's on the lid. So I will get that done, and I'll bring you right back, and we're going to make a special chocolate cake, and I'll tell you what it is when we come back. Okay, I have got my label on the top and my label on my jar. Let you see it there. And it would have had no problem putting 4 batches in there. I've got the 4th batch out right here, and I'm getting ready to make that. While I was gone, the pressure canners finished up, and they are going to back to the right pressure, and I'll be opening those lids here in just a minute to let them acclimate to the temperature. I was turning on my oven and remembered my husband had made granola this morning, and so it had just set in there until the oven cooled. And so I am going to put this in baggies and jars. He's going to have to come on sometime and show you his granola. It looks like he's got a lot of nuts in this batch. I know he's got peanut butter in it. He'll make a big batch, and this is 3 of the rectangle cake pans, glass cake pans full. And then he'll have it for breakfast for several weeks, and then he'll make him some more. So I'm just getting this put away. I will put this plastic container in the freezer out in the big chest freezer, and then we'll put a Ziploc bag in the freezer inside so that he can just get that out. And you don't have to keep it in the freezer, but it just stays fresher that way. So that's what we normally do. Sometimes he'll keep one bag out on the shelf. But it smells really good. I'll have to taste it here. It's really good. Okay, so that one's full. Let me get a Ziploc bag. Okay, so we will just put this in the freezer later on. And he is set for his granola. Like I said, let's get cooking. I was going to share with you a cake that I really enjoy making, and a lot of friends that I have made it for really like it too. And it's one of my go-to cakes for birthdays or special occasions where I have to travel with the cake, because it's a very nice looking cake, and it also is very easy to travel with. So this is called a triple chocolate pound cake. Now, I am not following the recipe that we had on our jar. When I want to make a chocolate cake, I'm going to make a homemade chocolate cake. Even though this is pretty much the same ingredients that you put into a cake that you're making from scratch, I have certain recipes that I use for homemade chocolate cakes that I really like. What I made this recipe for, this cake mix for, is when I need a recipe that says you need a box of cake mix. And so this is what I'll be using this for. And so this one that I have for you today uses a box of cake mix. And instead of buying one from the grocery store, I've got it right here. This is called triple chocolate pound cake, and it is a really good recipe. It is a really easy to travel with recipe. It's very rich. I have made it for numerous friends for their birthdays because it also looks very nice too, and it tastes very decadent. It's made in a bundt pan. It's got lots of chocolate, and then it's got a chocolate ganache for the topping. So it's really, really good. And I've been making this one for over 25 years. It comes from the What's for Supper by the Southern Living Cooking School book. And I think I made another recipe that I shared with you on a video for the enchiladas, the chicken enchiladas that came from this book too. So this is triple chocolate pound cake. So we're going to need a cake mix, and this is our cake mix, 4.5 cups of our cake mix. Now take a look at this. Does that look like what you get from the box? You get that same amount in a box? No, they have shrunk the amount of ingredients you get in a cake box these days. So we used to have a lot more flour and sugar and chocolate and all of the ingredients in our cake mix boxes, but instead of upping the cost, they have cut the ingredients so that you have actually fewer ingredients, but you still add the same things to it, but it's not the same cake. So we've got a nice bit of ingredients here. And this will mix up just fine for this cake, because back when this cake was made, they probably had just about this much ingredients in a cake box. And again, I don't use cake mixes very often. I used to use them a lot more, but I know when I did buy one and I looked at it, it's like, there's hardly anything in here. And your cakes just don't get as big in your pans anymore. So a lot of people are having to buy two or adding some additional ingredients like a supplemental mix. There's several online that you can get a supplemental mix to make your cake mix a full cake mix like it used to be. But I just think that's too bad. So we've got our cake mix in here, and to this we need to add a package of chocolate instant pudding. And so we're just going to add a box of that. Now, I did see that you can make your own chocolate instant pudding with clear gel instant. That's the instant clear gel. When I make my pie fillings, I use the cooked clear gel. It's a different form of cornstarch. It's modified so it holds better. And the instant brand of that clear gel will congeal just like the pudding. I'm sure there's clear gel in here. It's a modified food starch, and that's what makes it thicken without heating. So there are recipes out there using the instant clear gel. Now, if you live where you can't get the instant clear gel, it would not be a recipe for you probably. It would probably be too expensive to get the instant. But at our Mennonite bulk food stores, they have the instant clear gel. And I bought some a couple years ago, and it was really, really cheap. And it's probably gone up now, but I have it and it still works perfectly fine. So I might have to try making a chocolate pudding or a vanilla pudding using the clear gel. I'll have to try that out. That way, one less thing to have to buy from the store. All right, we have our pudding mix, we have our cake mix, and I'm just going to give it a whir. Just incorporate everything. And this is the reason why my cookbooks are so dirty. But, you know, if you find a cookbook that has pristine pages, might as well leave it where it's at, because it wasn't used, must not have any good recipes in it. But when you find a recipe book that looks like mine, pick it up, because there's some good recipes in it. Okay, so we've got that mixed. Now we're going to add half a cup of oil, any kind of oil you like. This is either canola or vegetable. 1 1/4 cups of water. And 4 eggs. I tell you, the price of eggs are almost $4 here. Getting to be very high. We are buying them locally and get much fresher eggs, but at the stores like Aldi's, where you usually get a good price, they're really high right now. So I hope that changes. That's one thing I want to get. I want to get some chickens here. As soon as we have time to get something set up for the chickens, I'd like to get some chickens and have our own eggs again. We used to have our own eggs, but haven't for several years now. All right, so I've got it all added, and now I'm going to just mix it. And once it's incorporated, we're going to mix for about 2 minutes. And I'm just going to give it a clean around the bottom and the sides just to make sure everything's going into it. And we've got it nicely mixed. Looks really pretty. Now we're going to put it into a bundt pan. Now if you wanted to bake this in a 13 by 9, of course you could. You probably won't need to cook it as long since it's distributed out a little where it's easier to cook quickly. But when you prepare your bundt pan for this, you want to spray it or rub it with shortening, butter, oil, and then you want to take cocoa and you want to put, maybe a tablespoon of cocoa, sprinkle it around, and then you just want to go around and pat it like this until it's all coated, the inside cone and the outside, because when this is just about cool, we're going to remove it, and if it's not coated well, it may not come out. It may have pieces that stick to the pan. So if you have a chocolate cake, I would suggest using cocoa because it won't look as noticeable as the flour. With a white cake, you would use flour. All right, now what I want to do before we put this in, I want to add some chips. And we're going to add, it calls for a 12-ounce package, but I'm only going to add about a cup because we're going to have a chocolate ganache for the topping as well. And so this is going to already be a very rich cake. So I'm good with just part of that. But if you want it really decadent like the recipe calls for, you just use a whole package, 12-ounce package of chocolate chips. And you can use chocolate, milk chocolate, semi-sweet, dark chocolate, whatever you would like, whatever you prefer. Get that all mixed in. And we're ready to pour it into our bundt pan. So let's pour it in. The pudding will make it very moist. And make sure you level it out nicely. And sometimes I just like to kind of do this to level it, and also in case there was a air bubble or something, it would come out. We're going to be putting this into a 350 degree, I believe it's 350, let me check. A 350 degree oven for 55 minutes. And it'll be done when you can take a knife or a toothpick and put it right in the center of the cake, and it comes out clean. Remember, you do have chocolate chips in there, so if it's chocolate chip on there, just try another spot and see. So this goes in the oven. I'll bring it back when it's done. All right, I just took it out of the oven and it looks really good. It rose up really nicely, and it'll go back down a little bit. It'll continue to drop just a little bit, but that's okay. It is looking great. So I'm gonna let this cool probably for about 30 minutes. And then when it's just a little bit warm, might be longer than that. And when it's just a little bit warm, I'm going to bring it back and we'll flip it onto a cake plate. But we do want to do it when it's a little bit warm so it will come out of the cake pan a little easier. All right, be back in a second. Okay, my cake is just warm. It probably has cooled down, probably 45 minutes, and it looks just marvelous still. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of go around and just loosen up the edges, especially at the top. Sometimes you get a little crispy piece there at the top. Just want to have that so that it's not stuck to the side there at the top. This cake rose very high. I think it's going to be delicious. One thing I was going to say about the cake mix that we made is it has baking soda in it. So if you ever wanted to use some buttermilk in place of your milk, maybe 1 cup of buttermilk, that would make a really moist cake, I think. So if you're just making it according to the directions on the cake mix jar, you could substitute in some buttermilk. All right, so now I'm just going to shake it back and forth a little bit. I feel it getting loose. There's a few places where it feels a little snug still. Let me see if I can find those places. Perfect. There it is. Very dark chocolate. And so the cocoa that you see on it blends in with the cake. And if we had used flour to butter or to use for nonstick, it would be white. But the cocoa just keeps it the dark color. So I want this to cool down just a little bit more before we put our ganache topping on. So I'll bring you back when we're ready for that. To make our ganache topping, what we're going to do is we're going to take a 1/2 cup of cream, and I heated it up in the microwave and it's hot. We're going to take 1 cup of semi-sweet chocolate chips, and we're going to add those to our cream. Move that out of the way. And we are going to let those kind of warm up in that cream for a second. And kind of move it around a little bit. Now, when you're making ganache, it will look like it's not going to come together, but it will. So I'm just stirring it here. And you're gonna think, oh, it's just separate. It's not gonna do what it needs to do. But just keep stirring. And then it'll get pretty thin and chocolatey. And then you're going to start seeing a change. It'll start getting glossy and shiny. And it's still not quite there. All those chips are still working their little magic and melting. There. And it'll start thickening up. You'll start feeling it getting thicker. And then you're going to get this really pretty, silky looking chocolate. It's glossy. It's really pretty. All right. This is ganache, chocolate and cream. And that is going to be our topping. So let's bring this right here. And all we're going to do, cool it down a little bit here. I just want to cool it down enough so it doesn't all run off the cake. Okay, and the cake is now cool. And we are just going to start drizzling it on the cake. and we're just kind of getting it on the top. And as soon as it gets to a certain point where it gets kind of heavy at the top, it'll start drizzling down. This cake is going to be very decadent. And again, all you do is put it on the top. Don't try to put it on the sides. It's going to go down the sides just fine on its own. It will level itself out and be perfect. We've got it all the way around. Put a little more here. And if it's cool in your house, it will cool down very quickly. And it will firm up to a really nice consistency that is easy to travel with, but it's easy also to slice and eat. It's not going to be a hard chocolate. It's just going to be a soft, firm chocolate. All right, we got all of it on there. And you can add sprinkles if you want, since it's fall, and I've got these fall leaf sprinkles. We're going to add these to it. And there we have it, our triple chocolate pound cake. Hey everyone, this is Karen from Blue Rooster Farm, and today we're back in the kitchen. It is day 2. Yesterday we finished up the beans. We were dehydrating some jalapeno peppers. We made chocolate cake mix. We had already had the white yellow cake mix, and today what we are doing is we're going to be filling this jar right here with a new mix. So if you are wanting to find out what we're going to be putting in that jar, stick around. Thanks for sticking around. I was hoping to have all of these mixes done yesterday, but sometimes I bite off more than I can chew. But we'll just get it done today. I think I'm going to have the yesterday's video and the finishing up in this video actually in 2 parts, in 2 videos, because I think they're going to be really long, or at least the first one is going to be real long. So I'll split them up so that we can have 2 videos, and that way it won't be a really super long video. So if you're new to my channel, I have several recipes that I have posted already. And one of the videos that I put out was for a super easy peach cobbler, and it used a cake mix, a bulk cake mix that we had here. It could also use a purchased cake mix. But on that video, I showed you how to make a yellow cake mix, which could also be a white cake if you just take out the yolks and double the amount of eggs. It would make a white cake. But I've made that one. And then on the video that's probably the one right before this, and the one I made yesterday, we did a chocolate cake mix in bulk, and we made a delicious triple chocolate pound cake. and we had some of it last night, and it is decadent, very rich, very chocolatey, really good. I cut it up and sent it to work with Andy this morning because we don't need to have that temptation around here, but it is a really good chocolate cake. So if you get a chance to try that, try that. If you don't want to make the mix, you don't have to. You can just use a chocolate cake mix from the store. All right, so we got those two done. Now I've got my third jar, and I was wanting to put something in this jar. So I've done both of these cake mixes before, and I love to have these on hand, but I haven't done, I've done some other stuff. I've done like the Bisquick mix, but I've done that quite some time ago, and some other stuff quite some time ago, but I haven't really had that on my shelf for a while. So I was trying to decide what could I use that would be really handy. I don't want to just make a mix just to have a mix on my pantry shelf. It has to be something that we're going to be using. And so I was thinking about what do we make quite a bit that it would make it easier on me to have it made in bulk. And I thought a baking mix, but not one that had the shortening or butter already inside of it like a Bisquick mix does. I thought, well, a muffin mix would be handy because a muffin mix would have the flour, the sugar, the leavening agents, the salt, and it would be a good base for a lot of things. Muffins, coffee cakes, probably even some cakes. But I thought that would be a good base for a lot of different things. So that is what I decided to make. Now I went through and I looked for different types of muffin mixes, and there's so many out there, and they have similar ingredients, just the amounts change and they vary. So I looked at the recipes we used a lot for muffins, the ones that we really liked, because I knew I wanted to be able to make those muffins with this mix. And I was able to come up with an amount that would work for all of the ones that we already have. And then I found a couple of other ones that I could make work for some recipes that I want to try. So today what we're making is a muffin mix, and we're going to make a batch of 4 mixes. So this will make 4 batches of muffins, and it's super simple and super easy. After we make the batch, I'm going to make a special muffin to try and see if we like it. But I'll also tell you there's a basic muffin recipe that I'll give you that just makes a plain basic muffin that will be delicious, and you could add your add-ins or whatever you want to add to it, or we can try some different ones and really bring it up a notch. So let's first of all get the mix made, and then we'll make some muffins. All right, I think I've got everything ready. Now, you might be saying, well, why don't you go ahead and put the shortening in there? And I could, and then I'd have muffin mixes, and I'd have biscuit mix and everything else all in that jar. But some of the muffins that we like to eat have oil, and some of them have butter, and some of them have shortening or lard. So I didn't want to just put something in here and then have to use that for all of my muffins. I wanted to make it so it's flexible, and this one should work real well. I'm excited to try it. So again, this is going to make 4 batches. I will have the recipe at the end of the video, and then I will also put it on Blue Rooster Farm Facebook page a couple days after this video goes up. So we are going to need 8 cups of flour to get us started. And I always have my cup measuring here. So we're going to get 8 of them in here. That is 8. Now you might have noticed I didn't level them off. If you're a beginning cook, level it off with a knife, make it exact. I've cooked long enough so when I measure something and I mix it with a liquid, I know if I needed to add a little more liquid or a little more flour to it, and I can determine it just by the way the batter looks. If you are new to cooking or you're unsure about it, measure it exactly, that way it'll come out the right consistency. So we have our 8 cups of flour. Now we need 3 cups of sugar. And remember, this is 4 batches, so that's only is that 3/4 of a cup per batch, which isn't too bad for at least 12 muffins. Okay, there's 3 cups. And remember, I said a basic mix has your flour and your sugar and your leavening agents and your salt. And so for the leavening agents, a lot of the muffins only had baking powder. I'm adding a little bit of baking soda to this. That way, if you're using buttermilk for your liquid, or yogurt, or some sour cream, or something else acidic, you will get a good rise with the baking soda. I'm not using a lot, so if you don't need it in the ingredients, it's not going to affect it. But I am adding a little bit so it can do its job in some of these recipes. So for this batch, we need 8 teaspoons of baking powder. It says 8 teaspoons. We need 2 tablespoons and 2 teaspoons. If you don't know, there is 3 teaspoons in 1 tablespoon. Okay. Then for the baking soda, like I said, we're not going to use quite as much. We're just going to use 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And again, I punch it down just to make sure there's no lumps, because I want that well incorporated into the batter. And we need 1 teaspoon of salt. Now you could add a little bit more if you wanted to. This is the low end. This is 1/4 of a teaspoon per batch, and usually 1/4 to 1/2 a teaspoon is a good amount. But if you don't want salt in it, you don't have to have it. I'm doing a little more than a teaspoon, just rounding it up a little bit, mounding it. And we have everything we need in there. And we're just going to mix it up with a whisk to get it well incorporated. Now for each batch of muffins that you make, you are going to use 2 3/4 cups of this mix. And then just for a basic muffin, you will mix the 2 3/4 cups of the mix with a stick of butter, which is a 1/2 a cup of butter melted. Or if you'd rather use a 1/2 a cup of oil, you could do that. Then you would also need 3/4 of a cup to 1 cup of milk. And the reason I put the range is, if it's milk, it's probably going to be closer to 3/4 of a cup. If you're using buttermilk, it's probably going to be closer to a cup. The buttermilk is thicker, and so it won't absorb as much. Also, you could replace the milk with not only buttermilk, but you could also replace it with yogurt if you'd like. And that is really thick, so you would want to make sure you have a full cup of yogurt. So between 3/4 cup and 1 cup of the liquid, whatever liquid you're using, milk, buttermilk, yogurt, any of those would be fine. And then you're going to also add 2 eggs. And when you make this, what you'll do is you'll put your dry ingredients in your bowl. You'll make a little well, and then you will take all your liquid ingredients and just plop it in the middle. And then with a fork, just very quickly whisk it together. You don't want to over stir muffins because they will get tough and they will not rise as nicely. So you want to just give them a quick whisk until the ingredients are just barely incorporated. I would also probably add a vanilla or an almond flavoring just to give it a more flavor. You can add anything to that. You could add chocolate chips, blueberries, raisins, cinnamon, any kind of spices that you want to add, you could add, but that is just for the basic recipe. And I will have that at the end of this video and on my Facebook page in a couple of days. So I think I've got this mixed up really well, and we're going to put it into our jar. And I've got some jar bonnets that I made for them last night before I went to bed so that they look all cute. If you want to make jar bonnets, I have a video on how to make those jar bonnets, and super easy, super easy. So we're just going to put all of this in here, and I'm going to keep out 2 3/4 cup. Before you use this, I would be sure you gave it a good shake to make sure everything's mixed. The heavier ingredients like the sugar and the salt would probably have a tendency to go to the bottom. So I would mix it well before you take your 2 3/4 cups out of the mix. Okay, this will have no problem. I could probably have put five mixes in here, even more, but there'll be no problem getting all of your ingredients in a jar. And I'm thinking this is probably a gallon. That's what I think it is. So you could make more. And if you made more, you would just, if you want to know what a single batch is, and I can put a single batch too, you can just divide everything by 4, and that'll give you the ingredients for a single batch. But I'll try to remember to put a single batch on there as well. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'll be sure to get a label. And then I'll also put, like I did on my chocolate cake mix, and I'll bring it over to you. I will also put a sticker on the top that tells what's in it, when it was made, and how to use it. That way, if I run out, I can mix some more up without having to go look for the recipe. And I also can easily just mix it up by looking at the lid. So I'll do the same thing with this one. I'll put one of those on our muffin mix, and I'll also put a sticker on the front, making sure I know what is in there. All right, so now I need to grab 2 3/4 cups, and I'm going to go ahead and get everything lined up for the muffins that we're going to make. And I'll tell you what kind we're going to make when we come back. I'll be right back. All right, we're back with everything laid out. We are going to be making some pumpkin spice muffins, and I think this is the perfect time of year. Today, it's a little warmer than I would like it to be. It's in the mid-80s today. We had such a nice day yesterday in the 70s, but I just went out to hang clothes between getting ready for this, and it's hot in the sun. But that's okay. We'll think cooler weather. I think this next week coming up, we're going to have 70s, so looking forward to that. But pumpkin spice muffins are what we're going to be having today. So I've got everything laid out. And so I was looking at the recipe that I had set up. And because we have pumpkin, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix my liquid ingredients in the bowl first, and then add my muffin mix last. That way we'll be sure to get all of the muffin or all of the pumpkin all mixed in with the eggs and the oil and everything before we add the flour and the leavening agents, because like I said earlier, you don't want to over mix your muffins. So my oven is heating up. You need to have a hotter oven. It's at 375. So it's preheating to 375, and we are ready to mix this up. So into this bowl, I am going to put a half a cup of oil. I'm going to put a half a cup of brown sugar. I'm going to put 2 eggs, large eggs. And then we're going to put our pumpkin and our vanilla. Now, I'll go ahead and get the vanilla first. And I'm just using vanilla paste. And I keep saying this, but I want to share this recipe with you soon. So it's really good. And if you make your own vanilla, then you need to know how to make this vanilla paste, because you can use the vanilla paste right away, whereas your vanilla the beans that you have to soak in the alcohol, that takes months to make, and you've got to wait for it. So this vanilla paste can be used equivalent to vanilla. So if we have 1 teaspoon of vanilla, we'll put 1 teaspoon of vanilla paste. And it's a thicker vanilla. You can tell I have to scrape it off there, but it is delicious. And then you're going to put your pumpkin. Now, if you're using store-bought pumpkin, this is going to be 1 can of the pumpkin puree. It's not the pumpkin pie mix. It doesn't have anything but pumpkin in it. And it's just the 1 regular size can. It's 1.5 cups if you're using your own. It's about 1.5 cups. I take our pumpkins when we have them, and I roast them, and then I puree them up and then freeze them in bags. And that is how I do the puree. If I want to do canning, it has to be in chunks, and then you have to drain it because it's in water. And I've done that before too. And in fact, I think I still have a couple on my pantry shelves, but it's not as user-friendly as the frozen. And this comes out very rich and just the perfect texture. I'm probably going to be doing a video on how I make pumpkin puree, because we've just gotten some pumpkins for decoration, and there's a couple small ones that I think I'll just go ahead and use right away. If you have pumpkins that you're using for decoration, don't get rid of them after the holidays. If they're still good, you can use those. Even if they're just jack-o'-lantern pumpkins, they make beautiful and delicious pumpkin recipes with those as well. And if you wait, I'll have a video out on how to preserve them and make delicious stuff with them. So I've got my liquid ingredients all mixed in here. So this is my brown sugar, my oil, my eggs, and my pumpkin puree and vanilla. Now, as you'll see, I don't have any milk in here because the liquid in this is the pumpkin. So that is what the liquid is. And since the pumpkin puree is really thick, it's using 1.5 cups of it. Now, this is a Danish dough whisk, and it is great for thicker doughs, just like this muffin mix will be. You know, if I'm going to use this, it's got to be with the wet stuff. So it would be fine right now and here, but once I add the flour, it's going to be too thick for this, but it will be just right for this Danish dough whisk. So I think I've got everything added to this. I'm going to go ahead and add the spices to this. Now, you're going to use 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And let's see, I probably have another teaspoon. My other teaspoon was wet from the vanilla. Yep, here's one. So I'm going to add 1, and I'm going to make it pretty good size. I like a lot of cinnamon. 1 nice size teaspoon of cinnamon, And then you're going to use pumpkin pie spice too. Now, if you don't have pumpkin pie spice, I would go ahead and add 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and then just a little bit of nutmeg, a little bit of ground ginger, and just a little bit of ground cloves. Not very much, just a bit. If there's something there you don't like, you don't have to put it in. If you want to just use cinnamon, just use cinnamon. So we're going to use a teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice if you have it. And I think there's probably some allspice or something in here too. I'll have to look at a recipe. I would make pumpkin pie spice for you guys, but I've got half a jar here, and since I usually just use it in the fall, I think I'm going to be good. Don't want to mix any up and not use it. So I'm just mixing those spices in here. That way when I go to add my mix, I won't have to stir too much. It's okay to stir this right here a lot because this is the liquids. We don't have the flour. It's not going to develop the gluten. Okay, before we add our flour or our muffin mix to our wet ingredients, you want to make sure your pan is ready. I have a 12 muffin pan, and hopefully this will fit. If not, I've got another one that I can add to it. You can either spray your muffin tin really good and maybe even put some flour in it. This one is coated, so it would just be okay with it being sprayed. But if yours has a tendency to stick, I would oil it and powder it. If you don't want to do that, use the little liners, and that's what I'm going to do. I have some really cute ones with fall leaves. So, and you can pick those up a lot of different places, especially during the fall. You know, like Hobby Lobby probably has them. I think I got these at TJ Maxx or Marshall's or something. And we have them at our Mennonite store here too. So it's always fun to find some cute ones and put them on your shelf because they last forever and you can have them for special occasions. All right, so now let's mix up our dough. So I'm just going to put that in. And I'm going to mix it until it's just incorporated. It may be just a little bit lumpy. That's okay. I just don't want to see flour. And you want to make sure you get whatever's on the bottom too, because you don't want it to be liquidy down there and just the flour on top. Okay, so here's what I've got. Let me move you closer here. And I can see that I have a little bit of flour down there. So when I take my spatula, I'm going to just roll it under the bottom of the batter, just like this, and flip it over, and flip it over, and flip it over. That way everything's incorporated, but I have not over mixed. And that's smelling good. Now, the easiest thing I've found to put these in cups is like an ice cream scoop. And I think this is probably the right size. This one's probably a little smaller, but I found this really cute one that I'm using for a cookie scoop. And I don't know about you or if it's just me, I cannot find a cookie scoop that will, I tend to break them right off. So that's heavy duty. And this is a heavy duty ice cream scoop. It's old, it's wooden, it's got great gears on it. And so I saw that and I thought, I need to get that. But I just love to find these things at secondhand stores, antique stores, and that's a great find. But I think this is the right size for our muffins. And we want to fill them 2/3 full. And I have a feeling we're going to have more than 12. So if you don't have 2 muffin pans, you can always just get a little pan and grease it and just put it in there and bake it. Or if you have a little glass bowl that is oven safe, you could do that. You know, as I'm putting this in here, I should have thought to put like a streusel topping on top. That would be really good. Now, if you have big muffin pans, you could use that too, the giant muffins. Or if you have the mini muffin pans, you could do that. It'll just change the cooking time. That one may be a little bit small. Okay, I'm going to wash my hands. All right. I was thinking about it when I was washing my hands, and I thought I need to put a streusel on that. These look too good not to have a streusel. So what we're going to do real quickly, I just had about 2 tablespoons of butter that I melted. I'm going to put in about 1/4 of a cup of oats, about 1/4 of a cup of brown sugar, and 2 tablespoons of our muffin mix. And we are going to stir that up. And we have got ourselves a streusel. Oh, I want to add a little cinnamon or pumpkin pie spice or both, whichever you want to do. And I would do about 1/2 teaspoon. And I'll show you what it looks like. So that's what the streusel looks like. So we're going to throw that on top of these real quickly, just a little bit, because they will be rising, and so you don't want it to just go crazy on there. But this will just give it a little bit of crunch, and it'll make it look pretty. All right, so I have 12 and 6. This is probably just 5 here, but I've got a couple small ones there. So it made 17 muffins, just regular size ones. So I'm going to stick these in the oven, and I'm going to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. If they're not done, and you can tell if they're done by just touching the top of them, and they should spring back. If they're not done, we'll just give them a little more time. All right, I'll bring you back when they're out of the oven. These peppers that I did yesterday have been on, or they were in the dehydrator, gosh, probably a day and a half, and they have finally dried. They have shriveled up into just little tiny sticks. And I am putting a glove on because even though they are dried, they are still hot. I made this mistake the other day when I was doing my other dried ones that I have here, and touched my eye even after washing dishes and cleaning and stuff. In the evening, I touched my eye with the same hands that I had used to put these in bags, and my eye started burning. And so it was still on my skin. And I was even careful not to touch it very much. I just kind of gently put them in the bag. So these are really hot this year. I think maybe because it's been dry, and also they're all red, and I think maybe when you let them go red, they even get hotter. So I am just putting them, and you can tell how dry they are. They're crisp. I'm just putting them in a Ziploc bag for right now. And at the end of pepper season, I will be grinding up these into a big jar of powder. And I'm sure I'll have more. These are all the red jalapenos. And this right here will probably make, half a pint of powder, maybe more powder. And then I had done some green ones because I was going to see the difference in the spice level of the green and the red. So at the end of the season, we usually have a lot of green ones on the vines, and we just have to pick them because we're getting ready for a frost. So all of those I am going to put in the dehydrator, and I'll see if there's much of a difference between the red and the green jalapeno powder. But I have frozen jalapenos. I've cut them open and froze them. I've kept them whole and froze them. I have stuffed them like the videos that I had done earlier. And so we've got plenty of jalapenos this year. And then these are the serrano peppers that I did the other day. I dried them, and I just left them whole, just took the stems off. And so they're in here. And I think with these, I'm going to do just more of a crushed pepper. And they're very hot. They are supposed to be hotter than jalapeno, but I don't know. Our jalapeno are awful hot this year, so we'll see which one's the hottest. But those are all done, so I will get those put away. You can put these in the freezer and they'll last indefinitely. If you have a question as to whether they're dry enough, I would put them in the freezer. I'm not worried about these. All of these are plenty dry, so I think I'll just be leaving those on our counter because I'll be adding to them. I've gotten several different chili powders so far, and we're going to really have some nice ones this year. And at the end of the season, hopefully I'll show you all of the ones that I have put together. So there is those dehydrated jalapenos. All right, these took 24 minutes in my oven. The other pan came out at 20. They were a little smaller. So they came out, and here we have them. They look really, really good. When I touch on them, they spring back. So they are done. We're going to let them cool just for about 5 or 10 minutes, and then we're going to give them a try. Okay, I've got one on a plate. It's cooled off for about 10 minutes, so we're going to give it a try. I'm going to cut it in half and let you look at it. It is a very soft muffin. And I'm going to very soft, nice, and light. And it looks very moist too. So let me taste it. That is really, really good. You know, it's like a cupcake and a muffin put together. But the topping, I'm glad we put that on there. That gives it a little sweet crunch at the top. That tastes really good. But it's just a little bit, so it's not overwhelming it. But very moist, very, very moist. You could even dress these up if you had company and do a drizzle on top, like an icing or something. It doesn't need it, but if you were just wanting it to even look fancier, that would be pretty. But this is really, really good. So if you want to give this a try, follow those directions that I had given you. I'll put a video at the end of this video. I'll put the recipe up, and then in a couple days, if you want to get it so you can just print it off on your computer or write it down a little more comfortably, it'll be on my Facebook page, Blue Rooster Farm. But you got to try it. Really, really good. I really appreciate that you watched my video today. Thank you so much for supporting my channel. If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe. I would really appreciate that. That helps more people be able to see my video. Also, liking and sharing helps tremendously with the YouTube numbers and how they promote videos. If you have any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the box below under description, or actually, no, that would be under the comment box. So I will put a link to my Facebook page in the description box so you can find it there. So I really appreciate you coming along with me today, and I hope you have a great week. Bye-bye.